Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Moon Circle. Today is March 13th. I had to look it up. 2025. This is for the full moon in Virgo eclipse edition. So, here we are, middle of March, getting ready to have a full moon, getting ready to have a lunar eclipse. What does that mean? So typically I will share with you all how just a little overview of the lunar cycle. I know I've said this the past couple of times, but we do have some newbies, and it's always good to have a refresher. I love watching and following the cycle of the moon because I call it my forever teacher. It is always teaching me about renewal, about gratitude, about just keeping moving forward while also taking time to reflect on the past. And one of the things that I was thinking this time was how I always mention looking back to 2 weeks prior, because we're meeting on a full moon. So, in some ways, this full moon is the culmination of what's happened this lunar cycle so far. So that would be since the last new moon, which is approximately about 2 weeks ago. But it also relates to things that initiated 6 months ago with the new moon in this particular sign, which is Virgo this time. And so we're always reflecting on the past, and I just was just thinking about it and I was like, oh yeah, the emphasis on the past. Well, we can't really reflect on the future because the future hasn't happened yet. But the past always has some lessons for us, and especially done consecutively, there is um just so much richness, so much gifts that can be learned from looking back to what our past is teaching us and what our life is teaching us and showing us and pointing us to towards, which then helps to make more informed decisions about how to move forward and close out the cycle. So we're on this full moon, we'll put the eclipse aside for just a moment here. With this full moon, the moon is in full luminosity. We are able to, it actually really is the time of most consciousness of the moon. It's like we can see everything now, as opposed to the new moon, which is the fertile void, which is the great unknown. We don't know what's going to happen now in this lunar cycle. Or maybe you can think about certain parts in your lives. Maybe there are things coming to a culmination where you're like, oh, this is how it's going to be. Like, let's say that you're gonna move to a new place or whatever. And before you move, maybe you don't even know where you're gonna move. And so that's this whole unknown thing. That's that new moon phase. And then you start gathering information, and then you start deciding where you're gonna go. And that's that waxing moon phase. And then you're like, okay, this is the place, this is where I'm gonna be. And now you're there and you're deep in it. And you're like, oh, this is how it's going to be. Not like what I dreamt it was going to be, but no, this is what it's going to be. I mean, it's like that, like getting a new job, anything that you do. I mean, it's on the small scale. You go grocery shopping. You're like, what do I want to put on my grocery list? That's the new moon time of the grocery cycle. I never really kind of thought about it like that, but it's funny. It's definitely how it goes for me. What am I going to put on the grocery list? Okay, I got my grocery list. Now I'm going to go. And then you go and you see what they have or they don't have, well, how it actually is. That moment when you're like, oh, this is actually what's happening. That is that time of the full moon. So that is the time that we're in this lunar cycle right now. So, as with all the different things that we'll talk about, there may be certain things in your life that are coming to mind where you're like, oh yeah, that is definitely coming to a culmination, whether it's something that's happened over the past couple of weeks or maybe something that's been building for the past 6 months since the new moon was in Virgo, which I think would have been about September-ish. I don't know what the date is exactly, but just doing the math in my head. So you might think about that a little bit and see what's coming to mind. So we've got that going on. Now, with the moon in Virgo in particular, Virgo, I don't know if any of you are a Virgo or if you know any Virgos. Ah, Debbie, you are the Virgo. So Of course, you may have other things going on in your chart, but as far as I know, Virgos are known for being very detail oriented. They like the details. They like, not only do they like knowing how a thing is done, where the things go, where all the things are, they know those things. Like they're going to know all the ins and outs of whatever it is that they're interested in. Like, and they're going to want to know those things. They like the details, they like keeping it together. And so, in some ways, this is a detail oriented time. Now, there's a couple things that are enhancing that quality of this moon and that are sort of like turning that part of this moon on its head. Let's talk a little bit about the eclipse in and of itself. So, eclipses are nothing to be scared of or afraid of or anything like that. I encourage you to not think of them as being good or bad. They're neutral. If they're going to lean into anything, it's going to be change. Eclipses are about change, rapid change, transformation on this whole other level. Okay, so eclipses, and hello, Heather, I see you. Welcome. I should probably tell you we're recording, but just, just so you know, that's what's happening. Let me pull out my notes here to make sure I don't miss anything. So, yeah, so eclipses, they're all about change. Change, 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 change. What I find with eclipses is that it can be rapid change, but a lot of times for me, it's like I don't notice it until later. I look back at this time and I go, oh shit, that was when XYZ happened. And I may not know at the time that that thing is going to bring all of this change, but it turns out that that's part of what was going on. So when we talk about like, and we were talking before the recording happened that there are some astrologers that are really like, what some people may consider superstitious about eclipses, like do not go outside during an eclipse. If you go outside, wear a hat. Don't do rituals on eclipses. Not the time to do the moon water. This is not a time for moon magic. Eclipse time is not a time for moon magic. And I do tend to lean into that a little bit, and it's for this reason. The energy of an eclipse is so unpredictable. So when we're doing magic, we're usually like wanting we're like trying to draw in maybe some particular outcome. And I like to leave whatever the change is going to happen up to the energy of the eclipse because it is so strong. I am not going to be able to have any kind of control over that. So it's kind of like, when you go out, when I'm just imagining like going out when it's like super windy out and you just let the wind do all the things to your hair. You don't worry about like trying to go this way or go that way or whatever or fight against it. You just kind of like it's a time of surrender really to that eclipse energy and also just like let it pass. Let it pass, let time go by, see what happens. This eclipse there are two types of eclipses. One is called a south node eclipse and one is called the north node eclipse. And eclipses come in pairs. Occasionally, they might be three in a row, but like this one, and then in 2 weeks with the new moon, we are going to have a north node eclipse in the sign of Aries. Now, what's interesting is that the north node and the south node, and I'm going to try to do this in a way where it doesn't just sound like Charlie Brown's like teacher talking over the intercom or whatever that is to most of you, but it the the north node is considered the mouth of the dragon. It's like a gathering energy, it's a consuming energy. The south node, which is what this is like the dropping out. It's the tail of the dragon. It's letting go, it's shedding, it's dismantling, it's releasing. So there's a lot of that energy going on right now with this eclipse. So, if you were to do anything with this eclipse energy, the one recommendation that I do have is not forcing any kind of letting go, but just allowing your mind to consider, okay, what is it that maybe I'm shedding right now? So we're not even talking about like intentions necessarily, like we might do with a full moon that's not in an eclipse, or the intention setting that we might do with a new moon. It's just kind of like allowing your mind to wonder about those things. So with it being a lunar eclipse, it's happening in the nighttime. It's happening with the moon. It also has to do with what's going on underneath the surface, what's going on with the unconscious, as opposed to in 2 weeks with the new moon eclipse in Aries. That will be with the sun, and it will be so much more about like conscious reality. So right now we're really working with what's being shed, what's being let go within your unconscious self. And so, since it's in Virgo, which is all about the details, in some ways we might see this as a time of letting go of the details, letting go of needing to know, letting things really just fall into place. The other thing that there's a couple other things happening. So that's like in a nutshell what's going on with this eclipse, with this full moon, um, and all of that. Is there anything else with that that I wanted to say? Oh, yes, is that this is the beginning of a story of letting go. So the way that eclipses work is they will rotate in the same sign. Rotate isn't really the right verb there, but we will also have an eclipse in this sign with the new moon. It'll be a solar eclipse with the new moon in Virgo in about 6 months. And then I think we'll have another one a year from now. I think that's how it will go, or it'll be next year. So don't quote me on that part. But we will have other eclipses in Virgo for about the next year and a half, 2 years. So this is the beginning of whatever that storyline is for you. And what's interesting is that we're in this super transitory time, because in 2 weeks, with the eclipse that will be with the new moon, that will be the ending of a story that has been going on for about 2 years, because it will be the last eclipse in Aries. So this is the first eclipse in Virgo, the beginning of a story. And then in 2 weeks, we will have that ending of a story where there will be, more change. It's sort of like you get the last chapter of the story. So right now we're in this first chapter of letting go, of the details. So that is everything to know about this moon and this eclipse. The other things that are going on in the sky right now are kind of interesting. I mean, I think it's always interesting, but the particular interesting parts for right now is that yesterday, Saturn. So Saturn is a planet that in some ways is also really detail oriented. It is like, this is the system. This is how you follow the system. This is justice. It's like, I'm going to put everything in its place. It's a little cold, but it really helps you like have some discipline. It's that kind of energy Saturn is. Saturn just had what's called a cazimi, which is a way of saying like the planet has crossed over the sun. It's also a really fun word to say. And when a planet has a cazimi with the sun, it's like it gets an infusion of all of that solar energy. So it really highlights the energy of that planet. And that right now is opposing the moon and the eclipse. So there's some sort of conversation that's going on between the Virgo full moon eclipse and Saturn and the sun. So in some ways, we're bringing to the surface all the things that are in the unconscious and doing it in maybe like a systematic way, but not necessarily being attached to the details. So we've got that sort of a polar energy going on. I see it as sort of a polar energy, but yet pretty complementary energy going on. And then we've got the last part that I won't get super into, but I do think it relates, is both Mercury is going retrograde tomorrow. And, I think probably everybody's heard about Mercury retrograde. It's when all the technology goes wrong. I consider it a time of review. I mean, anytime a planet is in retrograde, it's a really good time of review. Um, and it is definitely having a conversation with Venus because Venus is ultra also retrograde and they're in the same sign. So they're hanging out together, both retrograding together. So the thing with Venus is all about relationships. Venus is all about art and pleasure and beauty and the feminine and and then Mercury is like about communication, but it's sort of like really amplifying that message from Venus. Venus is about how we come together. So there's something about what are we letting go of? What will maybe this eclipse help us let go of that will be the beginning of a chapter, the beginning of a story that will maybe also um, help us review, go back, reassess things having to do with things that we do with other people, how we come together with other people, whether it's romantically, whether it's in groups, whether it's, coming together to make some change together. I mean, there's a lot of that energy going on right now in this world from what I can tell. So that is sort of the long of it. As far as what does this mean for you, what I encourage you to do. So typically in these circles, we will do a little bit more of a specified ritual, but since it's an eclipse, it just really doesn't it's just not really appropriate for ritual time, but I think it is very ripe for reflection and spending time thinking about all of these topics that have come up. So I have a couple questions for you, and I have a not an affirmation, but a fill in the blank um, exercise that you can do that may help you access some of these. But for right now, I want to encourage you to join me in coming together. And if you'd like to close your eyes, close your eyes. And we're going to do just a little bit of a grounding exercise here because with this eclipse energy, eh, things can feel really unpredictable. And I think especially with it being in an earth sign like Virgo, connecting with the ground, our physical selves, our physical body could be very helpful right now. So, as much as you'd like, take in a deep breath and just allow your breath to flow in and out. And just notice the things that pop up in your mind, especially if they relate to anything that has been shared or talked about tonight already. And then allow them to flow out or float away with that exhale. So breathing in deeply, feeling the lungs expand, maybe the heart lift, and exhaling, allowing the belly to soften. Maybe feel the weight of your body sink down deeper in your chair. And just notice that gentle movement of your lungs and the air flowing in and the air flowing out. And then if it feels right for you and is available, maybe imagine growing roots down from your body and descending into the earth, Feeling that connection and feeling that support of this planet. And then with your next inhalation, again, if you'd like, imagine as if you were a tree or a plant, whatever you'd like, growing branches, leaves, upward towards the sky, expanding outward. So when you breathe in, reach out. When you exhale, sink down, deep down. And maybe feel a sense of feeling solid. While still your branches sway in the breeze, there's a flexibility there. And yet you remain rooted. And from this rooted and solid place, maybe just get curious with yourself and ask, what do I want to change? What change would I welcome right now? Not asking to do the change or take any kind of action, just being curious. And in that curiosity, what might you be ready to let go of? Again, not actively searching for it to get it out. Just letting yourself wonder, hmm, what what maybe do I no longer need? And last, also wondering what new story could be beginning for you? What new story do you want to begin? And if you'd like, you can work with the idea of telling yourself and being clear of what you are letting go of. I am letting go of, or phrased another way, I'm breaking the habit of whatever it is. And then completing that with to make room for, again, whatever you want to welcome in. I am letting go of to make room for. And just know that for this moment, right here, right now, with this moon, with the planets where they are, that just bringing those ideas to your conscious mind is enough for right now. There's nothing left for you to do in this moment. And if at any time over the next days or weeks you feel off balance, just come back to this feeling of being rooted in the ground and flexible at your branches, swaying in the winds of change. So I invite you to take in a deeper breath. Maybe start to come back to your body in this space and time, in this room. Exhaling, maybe bringing some movement to your arms, your hands, your body, opening the eyes. And I'll share these, I'll share these questions and the exercise and the follow-up email. So don't worry about writing it down or anything. Of course, if there's anything that came up from the meditation that you want to write down, feel free. But from this quiet place, we will sign off. So I'll end the recording. Those of you that are here, feel free to stay and we can have any, sharing that you want to share. Those of you that are catching the recording, I would love to hear any parts of your experience that you want to share. I thank all of you for being here with me for this. I really enjoy getting to share with you my understanding of the moon and the planets and what's going on. And I hope that it brings some sense of meaning and belonging and reassurance and peace for you in the ways that it does for me. And I love you all, and we will see you next time.